for charitable property for the Public Guardian Trustee. Now he is the Public Guardian Trustee of Ontario. Ken has been instrumental in moving the reality, the environment for charities forward in a significant way over the years. And so I thought on our 25th anniversary would be a great opportunity to have Ken come and share the difference that the regulator, Public Guardian Trustee, has made in making the lives of charities and the reality better, which is kind of a nice thing to have the regulator doing those proactive things. So we're delighted to have you, Ken, and thank you for all your good work over the years. We know that Ken's off to India later on today, and so he has to leave shortly after 3:30. We have about 5 minutes for questions at the end, so I'm going to reserve the questions as a group for you, Ken. So if you happen to have questions, there's a box up there. Others of us will stick around for individual questions afterwards, but Ken, turn it over to you and look forward to your comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you for inviting me. I always enjoy an opportunity to come and speak to this group. It's always amazing to look out to see the number of people who are here, who come and want to be involved. I enjoy speaking to this group particularly because a lot of our outreach that we get involved with is lawyers speaking to lawyers. As exciting as that may sound, it often isn't all that exciting because we get really excited about small little points, I can tell you that, and wrong arguments. But what's so exciting is I come here and I see people who are actually involved in doing charitable work itself. And it gives me incredible optimism for the whole sector when I look out to see how many people are involved here. I came a little later this morning and I came into the back door just to look, and I actually thought I was at maybe a political congress or conference. I looked up, it was so huge, big blue drapes behind us here, big screens. It's a little different than when I first came. And I was trying to remember when I first came to this organization, to this conference. I know it wasn't 25 years ago because I wasn't doing this job then. Although I do think maybe my office might have been here, so I was going to put my hand up for the book, but I thought I'd let someone else get it just instead. But I've been coming for a number of years, and because it's the 25th anniversary of this conference, this important session that teaches so much about church and charities law, it really got me looking at the history, what's been going on. And as I said, I wasn't involved 25 years ago. Well, it's not quite true. I was involved 25 years ago, but I would have been more sitting out where you were. So I was a lawyer in a small town. I wasn't an expert in charities law by any stretch of the imagination. I had mostly a family law practice. And then when I got an opportunity to work in the charitable office at the Office of the Public Guardian Trustee, and I actually started learning something about charities law, one of the first things I said to my staff was, I'm not telling you any charity I was a director of before, because I probably breached almost every one of the rules that was listed in the course. And I know that I was doing good work and had the best of intentions. And even as a lawyer, I still wasn't doing what was legally correct in some situations, all for the best of intentions. But I did a lot of technical breaches. And that's why I was so excited to be involved in this area and to be involved. And I really enjoyed hearing from Murray and the words of wisdom from down under. Because when you look at charities law and what we have in Ontario, we still get really excited about the Statutes of Elizabeth from 1601. Charities law is really based on the common law, which is judges made. And as Sean very rightly pointed out, unfortunately, many of our judges are very human, and sometimes some of the decisions cause more problems than help. So these are the things we have to deal with. But even though we deal with very old legislation, we do have one piece of legislation in Ontario, the Charities Accounting Act, and that's what makes Ontario unique from other provinces in the country, because we actually have our own special charities legislation, and we actually have a part of the provincial government that deals with charities and charity issues that come up along the way. And so we are a bit different than other provinces. But as I point out to other provinces when I go on sessions, their law is the same as ours, because most of it is common law. And I think a lot of people, when they look at the situation of charities law in Canada, they say, well, it's all statute law. And they pull out, like this, the Income Tax Act. But the Income Tax Act is really an income tax legislation. And the provisions in the Income Tax Act that deal with charities law are really trying to codify in the Income Tax Act the common law principles, the principles of fiduciary law and trust law. So we really have to deal with that. But because a lot of what we do is based on court law, the common law, and some legislation, it gave us the opportunity in Ontario to make some changes. And we've done a lot of changes in the 20 years. A lot of those changes were driven by the real change that occurred in the charitable sector itself. Charities from 20, 25 years ago are very different than they are now in the work that is being done. And we're fortunate enough, I think, a little bit, that we've been able to keep step and to make improvements, at least from the best that we can, with the things we've done. And I've just listed in here the changes that occurred in Ontario under provincial jurisdiction, 14 different things from 1997 to 2018. I envy the advantage that our friends had in Australia when they had an opportunity to create their own charities commission. They were able to start with something new and to build something. We didn't have that advantage. We have an existing system, but we took those small steps that we could along the way to make those changes. And I want to highlight some of those changes we have, which were driven for a number of reasons. One in particular was to assist charities, to give charities more flexibility in fulfilling your charitable purpose. What was obvious to me when I started working in this sector is there were a lot of, I would call almost artificial rules, which were really affecting charities and making things very difficult for them to operate. Some at the provincial level, and some at the federal level. And there still may be areas of the law that people would like to see change, but we do look at things and we do keep things moving forward. So what we wanted to do was to help benefit the charity, make it more flexible. Running your small businesses for income are some of the changes we've had, better investment opportunities, dealing with land, and even more recently, social investments. The other thing is, I know it because I was a victim of it myself, understanding the law. It's very challenging for people to understand what the law is with respect to charitable sectors. And as I said before, what we saw vastly most of the time was unintended in compliance with the law. Innocent non-compliance. Wasn't done intentionally. But as with our friends in Australia, and I believe our friends at the Charities Directorate have the same thing, is we look for those who are abusing the system. Those are the ones we want to take action on. Those are the ones we want to use the might of government behind to do action for it. But one of the biggest challenges we have is distinguishing a good charity that's done something a little offside from a bad charity who's taking advantage of the rules. And it's not always easy to tell without a lot of look and investigations coming forward. So we wanted to make sure we made it easier for charities to understand what the law is and to get some independence and not always have to go to the courts for orders and give information. And also, let's cut out a little bit of the red tape. So we have, over time, done some changes with respect to our reporting requirements. I can't speak to the reporting requirements you have for the federal government and the Charities Directorate. My colleague coming up next maybe will cover some of that as well. But I do know that they're making a lot of efforts to make their reporting requirements easier for you as well. So the first thing we saw was Section 13 of the Charities Accounting Act, and I highly recommend the Charities Accounting Act to all of you. It's not that long, great act to read, even if you don't have the book. I don't think a lot of people actually do read it, but that's okay. It's there. But the thing that's important when you look at charities in Ontario and the provinces is, while my office looks after the abuses of charitable property, the real authority and the decision-making power rests with the courts. And so until we had Section 13, if you wanted to get authority to do something that would require some approval process, you actually were having to go to the courts to get that approval. Some of the examples we had were side-prey applications, and that's just where you have a trust fund. You can't carry it out anymore under the terms of the trust fund, so you want to make some amendments to it. You can't just do that unilaterally, you have to go to court. If you wanted to make payments to directors, you had to go to court. If you had trust agreements and you wanted to make some adjustments back to the disbursement quota, and before the federal government amended the disbursement quota, when interest rates dropped drastically, we had a lot of applications because of the fact that organizations could not meet the disbursement quotas and needed to get some relief and have the ability to encroach on some of the capital of their trust funds they had to meet those disbursement quotas. So what we did was create Section 13 to avoid having to go to court. So Section 13 is actually a mechanism which gives the charitable organization the equivalent of a court order without ever having to go to court. And just simply said, it's simply a situation that's in place that where everyone who would be a party in a court application agrees and consents, and if you come to our office and we review material and we agree or consent, we take it to the court, get the order issued as a court order, and now the organization has a court order to authorize them to do what they want to do. I can tell you we use it for non-controversial issues, things that are normal. We don't try to take the place of the judges, but we do know over time the types of things that the court is going to approve without any difficulty. These are always those no-brainer decisions where everyone wonders, why couldn't we do that? It makes so much sense to continue to do that. At the same time, when I started with the office, we did a review of the whole Charitable Walk program. And before 1999, under the Charities Accounting Act, we were served with every will filed in Ontario that contained a charitable request. We received probably about 10,000 a year. And I used to commute from Toronto to Oakville on the GO train because we had a lot of work in a very small department, and I was the new team leader and trying to show how much I was helping and rolling up my sleeves to work. I said, oh, look at the wills. I spent every trip on that GO train reading wills. It is unbelievable how many to go through. The vast majority of those wills contain something like, I leave $50 to my church for prayers to be said for the souls of my soul, or small amounts to named organizations. And I'm reading through all these wills and I'm going, what is this doing for anyone? What it was doing was slowing down a lot of estates dealing with them winding up their estates because they're waiting to hear back from us. And it didn't serve any purpose. It made sense when the policy was created, probably in about 1920, that we wanted to make sure that those charitable requests were actually paid to the charities, and charities weren't as efficient at overseeing and paying those documentations. But it really didn't serve any purpose. So we took steps to change the law to stop those wills coming into our office. I can tell you 18 years later, we still get about 100 wills a year saying, under the Charities Accounting Act, we are serving you with a copy of the will. So for the first 8 to 9 years, we used to send out a letter for everyone saying, thank you, you don't need to send it to us anymore. We've just given up. So if you're going to send it in, we just actually file it in our to be shredded in 1 year box. So save your paper and stop sending them. But in fairness to you, it's not you that's sending it to us. It's the lawyers who have a process in place, and it's been on forever. They just have their checklist from the Estates Department. Send the will to the Public Guardian Trustee. No one knows why, but they just keep sending them in over and over again. One of the other big substantive changes, which my office is very involved in, but really isn't something specific just to charities, was the changes to the Trustee Act, which provided for the proven investor rule. So this was a huge change for what organizations, what trustees who handled other people's money, how they could invest those funds. Before that, you could only invest it in specific types of investments. And the vast majority of that were Canada savings bonds. So you can imagine you're getting a lot of interest return on those investments. It had an impact on my own office as well because we had a lot of money we were investing for other people. And so we had to change our whole investment policy. So for those who've been to previous sessions, you'll know this is the thing, the lawyers, we like to get really